It started. RV prices are cracking right now. Here's where, which models, and how to protect your cash. Floor plan lenders are tightening, repo yards are swelling, and dealers are dumping like-new inventory through auctions, buybacks, and bulk liquidations just to survive. The 2025 RV slide just turned into a drop. Prices are slipping week after week. In this video, I'll show you hard proof it's underway, the models and years falling fastest, and the exact 2025 buy-sell window so you don't get trapped upside down. If you're shopping, I'll give you a 3-step protection plan and 3 critical inspections to dodge liquidation lemons that can wipe out your savings. Let's see how it started. The overnight pileup. It started quietly. Just a few more units sitting on the lot, a few extra rows stretching into the dust. But by spring of 2025, the numbers became impossible to ignore. More than 3 million recreational vehicles, both new and used, now sit unsold across North America. That is the highest backlog ever recorded. From Indiana's production belts to Arizona's dealer rows, every corner of the industry is choking on excess. Dealers blame overconfidence. Manufacturers kept shipping even when sales dropped, assuming the pandemic-era demand would last forever. But buyers vanished the moment interest rates climbed. A manager in Elkhart summed it up bluntly. "We kept getting deliveries we didn't order. Now our backlots look like a parking lot for a failed festival." The visual proof is everywhere. Drone shots of acres of idle rigs shimmering under the sun, plastic still clinging to their windows. The so-called outdoor boom has collapsed under its own weight. But what looked like simple overstock turned out to be something much darker. What happened next exposed just how quickly the dream of freedom on wheels turned into a nightmare of falling prices. The price tag freefall. By midsummer, the markdowns began. A 2022 Thor Chateau that sold for $59,000 last year now lists for $34,000. Dealers in Oregon advertise massive clearance events, yet foot traffic is lower than ever. A Jayco Redhawk discounted by $20,000 still sits untouched. Buyers have learned to wait because every week the prices sink further. At regional auctions, the desperation is even clearer. Units that fetched $45,000 a year ago are struggling to reach $28,000. One auctioneer in Texas told us, "It's like gravity just tripled." Even discount brands like Coachman and Gulfstream cannot escape the plunge. The used market, once a safety valve, has turned into a floodgate. Families who bought at pandemic-high prices now owe more than their rigs are worth. Dealers whisper about wholesale panic, fearing their lenders will call in floor plan loans. Every sale now feels like a loss disguised as a bargain. And the reason they can't stop slashing prices might shock you, because behind those falling numbers lies a cost that is bleeding the industry dry every single day. If you're shocked by how deep this crash goes, hit like and drop a comment. Let's expose how bad it really is. The silent lots. Walk onto any dealer's backlot and you can feel it. The quiet, the weight of too much metal and too little cash flow. Rows of gleaming motorhomes sit under the summer sun, untouched for months. Each unit costs money just to exist. Dealers pay floor plan interest, a silent meter ticking away on every rig. On a $70,000 motorhome, that means roughly $12 a day, every day, in financing costs. Multiply that by hundreds of units, and you see why owners call it the slow bleed. One dealer in Ohio confided, "We used to turn inventory in 60 days. Now we're staring at units we've held for 200. The math is merciless. If a single unsold RV sits for half a year, the dealer burns over $2,000 in interest before it even moves an inch. Add insurance, depreciation, and yard maintenance, and profit evaporates long before the first handshake. These carrying costs have become unbearable, turning optimism into debt overnight. Those numbers forced dealers into moves that crossed ethical lines. To survive, some dealers began rewriting the rules and bending the law in ways few buyers could imagine. The hidden traps. When survival becomes the goal, morality becomes optional. Across the country, dealerships have quietly begun playing games with paperwork to stay afloat. Brand new units are being titled to employees or relatives, driven just a few miles, then relisted as used to dodge manufacturer restrictions. A 2024 Winnebago Mini sold this way in Florida carried a used label, but had only 3 miles on the odometer. The tactic lets dealers skirt factory-imposed price floors and avoid paying certain interest penalties. Customers rarely notice, but it means they're buying rigs that technically lost their new warranty coverage the moment they left the lot. Other stores inflate dealer prep fees, or push unnecessary protection packages just to squeeze a few extra dollars of margin. Manufacturers, desperate to keep shipments moving, turn a blind eye. They know if the dealers fold, the production lines stop. Everyone is complicit in pretending the market is fine, while quietly clawing for survival. And up the chain, factories started feeling the same pain, because once the lot tricks failed, the collapse moved straight to the factory floor, where the real bleeding began. The Floorplan time bomb. Every dealer lives on Floorplan loans, the short-term credit that fills their lots before buyers appear. When rates jumped from 4% to 10%, those loans turned lethal. A mid-sized dealership in Wisconsin now pays roughly $18,000 each month in interest just to keep rigs parked. What was once manageable has become a bleeding wound. Each unsold motorhome costs about $12 a day in interest. Multiply that by hundreds of units, and the total explodes. One manager admitted, "We're paying the bank more than we're paying our crew." Negative margins spread like rust. Lenders finally saw the truth on their spreadsheets. The moment they did, the credit noose tightened, and when the banks noticed, they pulled the plug. As financing evaporated, panic rippled from the showrooms straight up the supply chain. The bankers retreat. By early summer, the lenders blinked. Letters marked credit line reassessment landed on dealer desks nationwide. Translation: fewer loans, harsher terms, sudden cancellations. A leaked memo from one major RV finance network cited elevated exposure risk. Behind that phrase were repossessions rising faster than at any time since 2008. Dealers who depended on those funds to restock found their accounts frozen. Without cash, they could not accept new shipments even as factories kept sending them. Some mortgaged homes to cover interest. Others shut their doors. Auctions overflowed with repossessed rigs from bankrupt lots. The gears of the market seized completely. With money frozen, factories had no choice but to hit the brakes. And when the production line slowed, thousands of workers learned how fast optimism turns into unemployment. The assembly line stall. Inside Winnebago, Forest River, and Jayco plants, the hum faded to silence. Conveyor belts that once ran 3 shifts now sit idle for hours. Output is down between 20 and 30% since January. In Elkhart County, Indiana, the heart of RV manufacturing, furlough notices stack on bulletin boards. "We used to build adventures," one technician said. "Now we wait for the phone to ring." Suppliers of cabinets, wiring, and fiberglass shells watch orders vanish. Trucking companies that haul finished units sit half-empty. The entire ecosystem built on steady movement has seized up. Executives call it a temporary correction, but inside the gates, workers know the truth. Production only stops when demand dies. But on the consumer side, a new panic was already taking shape. Out in the showrooms, buyers stared at contracts that no longer made sense. The sticker shock revolt. For generations, an RV meant freedom. In 2025, it means debt. The average new unit sells for around $70,000, more than most households earn in a year, even discounted. Monthly payments exceed many mortgages. A $50,000 loan at 10% interest over 10 years equals roughly $660 a month before insurance or repairs. Buyers feel it instantly. They test drive, smile politely, and walk away. Dealers try to lure them back with 0% financing, extended warranties, or free storage. But everyone knows the gimmick ends the moment paperwork starts. Prices are still insane. Showrooms grow quieter by the week. Rows of unsold rigs glare under fluorescent lights, monuments to wishful thinking. The public has decided to wait the industry out. Then the repos began, and the crash turned personal. What started as numbers on balance sheets was about to spill onto driveways and front yards, dragging ordinary families into the wreckage. The Repo Roadshow. The sound is unmistakable, a low mechanical whine cutting through the stillness of suburban nights. Across America, tow trucks are reclaiming recreational vehicles that families can no longer afford to keep. The repossession rate has surged 28% year over year, the fastest spike since the 2008 financial crash. For lenders, it is just a number. For owners, it is a public heartbreak played out under streetlights. Most of these families are underwater, owing far more than their rigs are worth. When values collapsed by 30 or 40%, many buyers realized their only option was surrender. Some handed over the keys voluntarily, hoping to salvage what remained of their credit. Others watched in disbelief as trucks backed into driveways to haul away memories they were still paying for. The humiliation does not end at the curb. Once the rig leaves, the balance remains. The loss of a vehicle often means the loss of dignity and savings. But the shock doesn't end with losing the rig. It destroys credit for years. And when the repossession papers settle, the next blow arrives quietly, hidden inside a credit report. Credit collapse. Maria Jenkins, a construction project manager from Portland, bought her dream Class C 2 years ago for $72,000. After months of missed payments, the bank auctioned it for $41,000, leaving her with a $31,000 debt she still owes. "I lost the RV and my credit in the same week," she said, fighting back tears. Her score dropped over 100 points, locking her out of car loans and even apartment leases. Lenders call these deficiency balances, and they are multiplying fast. With resale values plunging, auction proceeds rarely cover what borrowers owe. Banks then sell that unpaid balance to collection agencies, extending the pain for years. Families who once prided themselves on spotless credit now find themselves labeled as high risk. The financial fallout seeps beyond the buyers. Co-signers, often parents or partners, are dragged into the same nightmare. Entire households are discovering how one repossession can upend everything from insurance rates to job applications. And that ripple will soon reach Main Street, because when enough households fall, the damage spreads beyond individual credit. It begins rewriting the economies of entire towns. The local fallout. Drive through Elkhart, Indiana, and the silence speaks louder than any statistic. Once busy dealership lots stand half empty, not from sales, but from closures. In Oregon, supply companies that produced fiberglass panels and trailer windows are shuttering after decades of operation. Each layoff means fewer paychecks spent at diners, hardware stores, and repair shops. The local news in one county described it bluntly: "When the RV industry coughs, this town catches pneumonia." At the same time, service departments that once thrived on regular maintenance now see fewer customers, as owners cling to older rigs instead of upgrading. Churches report rising requests for food assistance. Some former factory workers now pick up temporary gigs driving delivery vans or mowing lawns just to cover rent. Economists say the national numbers still look stable, but small-town America knows better. Beneath the averages, the collapse feels personal, even biblical in scale. Yet through the wreckage, a few buyers found a strange advantage. Out of the ruins, a new breed of bargain hunter is emerging. People who learned how to turn panic into opportunity. If you want the real numbers before dealers admit them, subscribe now, because the next price wave hits sooner than you think. The survivor's edge? Not everyone lost. A handful of patient buyers waited, watching repos flood auctions until prices hit rock bottom. When a 2023 Keystone, Montana dropped from $72,000 to $41,000, they pounced. One retired mechanic in Kansas said, "I waited 2 years, paid cash, and saved more than $30,000. Let the banks panic. I'll camp cheap." His attitude is spreading. Repo yards have become treasure maps for savvy shoppers. Some families pool cash to buy at half price, fix minor issues, and hit the road debt-free. Others focus on older, durable models with fewer electronics, the kind that can be repaired with basic tools instead of laptops. These buyers are not chasing luxury, they are reclaiming sanity. For the first time in years, the power has shifted back to consumers who play the long game. They know patience beats payment plans. And that patience set up the next great reset, because the people who waited out the chaos are about to shape the market that rises from its ashes. The industry reset. 6 months after the first major wave of repossessions, the recreational vehicle market bears little resemblance to the boom years. Prices have fallen an average of 30% across nearly every class, from compact towables to massive diesel pushers. Manufacturers have issued revised guidance cutting production by another 20%, and several smaller brands have disappeared entirely through mergers or closures. Factory towns once humming with overtime shifts, now idle under half-capacity schedules. Comparing 2024 to 2025 tells the full story. Shipments dropped from nearly 500,000 units to just over 340,000. Even the biggest names, like Winnebago and Forest River, trimmed product lines and closed satellite plants to survive. The reset is painful but cleansing, a market forced to find its true size again after years of excess. For buyers, it's a turning point. The chaos created genuine bargains for the first time in a decade. But not everyone lost. Some buyers finally beat the system. And at the end, the sole survivors of this great correction began to emerge. Winners and losers. Out of the wreckage came two clear groups. On one side stand the opportunists, cash buyers who waited out the hysteria. They watched prices plunge, then struck. A retired couple in Arizona picked up a nearly new Class A for less than half its original sticker. Independent used lot flippers followed suit, scooping repos from auctions and reselling them after minor repairs. Some even partnered with mobile mechanics to keep overhead low and margins high. Dealers who survived the collapse did so by shifting their focus. Instead of pushing new inventory, they leaned on service departments, maintenance plans, and rental programs. A handful even began offering reliability rebuilds, refurbishing older, simpler rigs that customers could actually afford. For every dealership reborn, another 5 closed permanently. The losers are easy to spot: anyone trapped in loans written during the peak. Negative equity remains a slow-motion sentence for thousands of households. Still, a few policy shifts could undo those gains overnight, because while the market recalibrates, the political winds are already shifting, and they might change the math all over again. The policy crosswinds. Behind every market crash lurk policymakers trying to fix what they barely understand. The Federal Reserve continues to debate when to ease rates, and each speech from Washington moves the entire financing landscape overnight. A single percentage point shift can add or remove thousands from a buyer's total cost. At the same time, proposed tariffs on imported steel and components threaten to lift production costs just as factories stabilize. Then there's the electric vehicle distraction. Lawmakers keep funneling incentives toward battery-powered transportation, leaving gas-powered RV makers out in the cold. If those subsidies expand, traditional motorhome builders could face new taxes or compliance fees. That would mean higher prices before the recovery even begins. For now, the market holds steady, but it's a fragile piece. One unexpected policy announcement could send financing costs soaring again. Which brings us to the last warning before the clearance storm, because the next few months will decide whether this reset holds or breaks completely under the pressure of liquidation. The clearance winter. As autumn turns to winter, dealers across the nation prepare for one final act of survival: the liquidation season. With credit still tight and inventory loans coming due, many will be forced to clear their lots at any price. Analysts predict December and January will bring the steepest markdowns in a generation. Buyers who waited could see $40,000 travel trailers sold for under $25,000. The smartest play is patience with precision. Watch for distressed dealers advertising last shipment or pre-bankruptcy events. That's when prices drop hardest. Avoid over-accessorized rigs loaded with gadgets that fail early, and focus on proven models under $5,000, the ones with cheap parts and reliable frames. Bargains are out there for those willing to travel a few hundred miles and pay cash. The RV crash isn't a rumor anymore. It's reality. Dealers are desperate. Prices are falling, and only informed buyers will come out ahead. Don't let a dealership or a bad loan decide your future. Subscribe now and stay ahead of every major price move, model recall, and liquidation trend before it hits mainstream news.